Nature has many colors and they are beautiful. But how can we learn to organize these colors and mix them on our palette without getting confused? Let's see. When the sunlight shines through water moisture in the air, every tiny drop of water acts like a prism, breaking up the light into the spectrum of colors that form a rainbow. At one end of the rainbow, you can see the color red, and at the other end, you can see the color violet. Under ordinary conditions, infrared and ultraviolet rays cannot be seen. In order to create color systems, we join the two ends of this rainbow and build a color wheel. Two of the better-known color systems are the Triadic system and the Munsell system. The Triadic system is the most elementary system and consists of a wheel with three original hues called primaries: red, blue, and yellow. These colors are mixed in pairs to arrive at the three secondary hues. Red is mixed with yellow to get an orange hue. Yellow is mixed with blue to get a green hue. And blue is mixed with red to get a violet hue. Then we mix each secondary hue with its primary neighbor to get tertiary hues. If we mix red with orange, we get a reddish-orange hue or an orange-red hue. We mix orange and yellow to get a yellowish-orange hue. Yellow and green make a yellowish-green or a greenish-yellow hue. Green and blue make greenish-blue or a bluish-green hue. Blue and violet make a bluish-violet or a violet-blue hue. Violet and red make reddish-violet or a violet-red hue. Hues directly opposite each other on the wheel are called complementary colors. Therefore, red and green are complementary colors. So are violet and yellow, and orange and blue. It's important to understand that the resulting mixture will depend on the proportion of one pigment quantity to the other. It will also depend on the brand and grade of the colors you purchase. The better grade of color, the stronger its pigmentation. When the first attempts at color printing were made at the beginning of the 20th century, it was discovered that all hues could not be printed with the primaries red, yellow, and blue. A more advanced color system was created by Albert Munsell in 1900 and later used by Paul Klee in 1920. Colors used in this system are cyan, which is a greenish blue, yellow, and magenta, which is a violet red. These same hues are used in modern printers run by computers. Hues on the Munsell wheel are equidistant from each other. Unlike the triadic system, where some hues jump from one to the other without a consistent transition between adjacent hues. Another advantage of the Munsell system is that complementary colors are more precise. Orange and blue yellow and bluish violet, red and cyan or greenish blue, violet and yellowish green, magenta or reddish violet and green. A complementary color is a visual phenomenon that influences your sight when you look at a particular color for approximately 30 seconds and then look at another color surface. There, you will easily be able to see the first color's complement. Let's see. If you observe this yellow disc for 30 seconds or longer, you'll see the phenomenon I'm talking about. Don't look elsewhere. Keep looking at the yellow disc. Yellow's complementary color is bluish violet. You will start seeing bluish violet vibrating around the yellow disc. Now look at this white surface. Here you will see yellow's complementary color, bluish violet, more clearly for a few seconds. This phenomenon is called successive imaging. A color's complement influences its neighboring color. If instead of white, such a surface were of another color, bluish violet would mix optically with that color. This vibrating phenomenon was used extensively in the second half of the 19th century during French Impressionism, especially in pointillism by Georges Seurat and Paul Signac. Color has three properties: hue, tone, and intensity or chroma. So far, I've been talking about colors as if they only had a single property. I've referred to red, yellowish green, and blue. This is called a color's hue. But color also has tone or value and intensity or chroma. Tone or value refers to how light or dark a color is. Here we see two blue hues, but the hue on the right has a lighter tone than the hue on the left. Here we see two red hues, but the hue on the left has a lighter tone than the hue on the right. Here we have two different hues, one yellow and one blue, but we know that the yellow hue's tone is lighter than the blue hue's tone. We can see here that the red hue's tone is lighter than the blue's. Whenever you find it difficult to distinguish tones of different colors, try squinting your eyes so that hues are blurred and grayed. It will be easier this way. What difference do you see here? The hues are different, but the tones are the same. There are 9 tones for each hue on the Monsell wheel, and each tone has its equivalent tone around the wheel. Studying color tones is extremely important in oil painting because it determines the structure or composition of the painting. Even from far away, the first thing you see in a painting is the distribution of tones. We might not be able to see if the subject matter is a tree, a person, or a building wall, or whether the subject's hue is violet, red, or brown. But we can be sure that the subject has a dark, middle, or light tone, and we are either attracted to or not attracted to its composition. The other color property is intensity or chroma. Intensity is how bright or gray a color is. Here we see mixtures of color gradations where intensity is lowered from left to right until the colors have turned gray. Observe that hues and tones have remained constant. Only the intensity has changed from bright to gray. We can observe this decrease of intensity in nature when we compare closer objects to ones farther away. In this landscape, compare the higher intensity of closer hues to the lower intensity of distant hues. Closer vegetation has a brighter yellowish ochre green hue. Farther away, we can see vegetation losing some of its yellowish hue and changing to a lower intensity green. Even farther, the vegetation no longer has any yellow in it and changes to a very low intensity blue hue. At the same time these changes in hues are taking place with greater distance, the intensity is lowered so much that blues turn gray with light tones in the distant mountains. These changes are due to air, humidity, dust, and other matter in the atmosphere that our eyes must see through. These changes are more dramatic on cloudy and rainy days. It's important not to confuse intensity with tone. Remember that a hue can have a light tone and low intensity at the same time. This orange hue has a higher intensity than the yellow hue, even though the yellow hue is lighter in tone. Here we can see a red hue changing its tone vertically and changing its intensity horizontally. These exercises help fix in our minds the three properties of color. Colors have the most intensity when they come out of the paint tube. Their intensity decreases when you start mixing them with other colors. Even hues of flowers and fruits rarely have such intensity, requiring unmixed paint straight from the tube. We might think that these apples have the highest intensity red hue and would have to use pure red paint straight from the tube and directly onto the canvas, but that's not the case. Now, compare the apple's red hue intensity with the higher intensity of this red disc. Comparisons like this help us more easily evaluate differences in color intensities. Of course, use of this color property depends on your concept. I'll talk about concept in the last part of this course. The best way to learn how colors from your paint tubes behave is by mixing them in a particular order. I suggest you prepare 4 middle tone gray surfaces on paper or canvas to create color gradations on. With a carbon pencil, draw a pair of parallel lines about 2 inches apart. Mix the 3 primary colors red, blue, and yellow to get a dark color very close to black. With the number 6 filbert brush, pick up some of this very dark color and make a vertical stroke on the left end between the lines. Add a little white paint to the mixture and make another stroke next to the first stroke. Add a little more white paint and make another stroke next to the second stroke. Keep adding white paint to the mixture while making additional strokes and trying to create a tone gradation with equidistant jumps between tones. You should make at least 9 tones. You can label this transition gradation of grays with the 3 primaries. Clean your brush with a rag or paper towel before proceeding to the next surface. You might have to wash the brush with turpentine so the next color doesn't get contaminated. On the second surface, prepare 3 pairs of parallel lines, 2 inches apart. On the first pair, you will have mixtures of the complementary colors green and red. Make the first brush stroke without adding white color. Then keep adding a small amount of white color with each brush stroke until you get a gradation from the darkest tone to the lightest tone. You should make at least 9 tones and reach a very light tone. In the same way, make the second tone gradation from the complementary colors blue and orange, and the third tone gradation from the complementary colors violet and yellow. Label these gradations from the complements. On the third surface, prepare 3 pairs of parallel lines 2 inches apart. The first pair is for a gradation from green to red. Do not add white paint to these mixtures. The second pair is for a gradation from blue to orange, and the last pair for a gradation from violet to yellow. Label these gradations complementary colors. On the last surface, prepare 3 pairs of parallel lines 2 inches apart. Make the first gradation from red to yellow. Do not add white paint to these mixtures either. The second gradation will be from red to blue, and the last gradation from blue to yellow oil paint. Label these gradations analogous colors. The color wheel is divided in 2 halves or color sections. The color section covering red, orange, and yellow is commonly called warm colors because when we see them, they give us a conscious or unconscious sensation related to fire, blood, and other objects we identify with such temperatures. The color section covering green, blue, and violet is commonly called cool colors. When we see them, we relate them to things like the sea, vegetation, the sky, and other objects we identify with related temperatures. When colors are light toned, warm colors appear to come forward or advance toward us, while cool colors appear to go back or recede from us. When colors are dark toned, the opposite is true. Warm colors recede while cool colors advance. Of course, all of this depends on what the neighboring colors are. There is a temperature range between these two general classifications of warm and cool colors. Any hue can be made warmer or cooler with its adjacent hue on the color wheel. Observe the yellow hue in the center, which was made cooler towards its left with a green hue of the same tone as the yellow hue, while it was made warmer towards the right with an orange hue of the same tone as the yellow hue. Knowing different types of color contrasts is very useful. A simultaneous contrast occurs when we change the background hue's tone, which there is some color shape on. Here, an orange hue on a dark background seems lighter in tone than an orange hue on a light background, even though both orange hues
are identical. So, if we want to change hue's tone, we can do it directly or indirectly by changing its background tone. Observe this simultaneous contrast on every stripe, where darker tones make the lighter tones even lighter, and lighter tones make the darker tones even darker. Knowledge of complementary colors in oil painting is essential. In a complementary color contrast, we place two complementary colors next to each other to obtain the greatest possible vibration. Each hue influences its neighboring hue with its complementary hue, thus enhancing it further, since it already is its own complement. Remember, a hue influences its neighboring hue with its complement. Here, in spite of the fact that both central hues are identical greens, the green that has a yellow background seems bluish because it's influenced by a blue-violet hue, which is the yellow background's complement. The green that has a violet background gets influenced by yellow, which is violet's complement, therefore looking like a yellowish green. However, when two complementary colors are physically mixed, they cancel each other out, resulting in grayed colors. In a warm-cool contrast, a cool hue is placed next to a warm hue. In a saturation contrast, two neighboring colors have the same hue but different tones. One of the questions which students ask the most is how to mix the color of human skin. It's true that this color varies a great deal depending on the particular person's skin color and complexion. But in general, a basic skin color is a middle tone orange of low intensity. For a darker skin color, you can add a little burnt umber. If the skin is lighter, use more white. You can modify this basic color as you gain experience and observe changes related to light source, atmosphere, and influence from neighboring colors. The best way to mix a particular color is to consider each of the three color properties separately and to adjust the mixture until you arrive at the desired color. Let's start with the first color property, the color's hue. Let's say you want to mix this skin color. Looking at the color wheel, we notice that the closest hue to this skin color is within the orange color family. With a little practice, you will have the color wheel memorized. You can start by mixing cadmium yellow light and cadmium red light. You can do it if you want, but I'll warn you that the orange hue's intensity you will get will be very high. Cadmium yellow light's intensity is very high, and so is cadmium red light's. When you look at the colors available on your palette, you realize that orange can also be mixed from yellow ochre and cadmium red light. Yellow ochre's intensity is much lower than cadmium yellow light's, and it begins to soften and lower cadmium red light's intensity. In fact, you'll see that we'll have to lower this mixture's intensity even more. Alizarin crimson is a violet-red hue, and I don't think you want to use it in this mixture. You'll gain this type of experience with practice. Now, we'll take a look at the second property of color, tone. Since the orange hue we just mixed has a darker tone than the skin color's tone we want to mix, we have to add a little white. When you want to mix a very light color tone, I recommend you start with white and add other colors afterwards. It's a very common mistake among students to mix two colors first and then find out afterwards that they have to use a lot of white to lighten the resulting mixture's tone. Starting with white is more practical. Of course, once you have experience with color proportions, you can add small amounts of the two colors and then add white to the mixture. This is a good way to avoid wasting paint. Finally, let's take a look at the last color property, intensity. Notice that the intensity of the color we just mixed on the palette is higher than the intensity of the skin color we want to mix. In other words, the skin color we mixed is more alive or brighter than the color we want. In order to lower the intensity of the mixed color, you can add a little of orange's complementary color, blue. When you mix colors located across each other on the color wheel, they tend to gray or cancel each other out. This lowers the mixture's intensity. Although you can later experiment with phthalo blue, it has a strong tinting power and is cooler than ultramarine blue. We add a little bit of ultramarine blue to the mixture, very little, and see what happens. Notice that when we add ultramarine blue, we not only lower the mixture's intensity, but also darken its tone, because blue's tone is darker. In this exercise, we've seen that when you change one property in a color mixture, you might also change the other two properties. With practice, you'll learn how to manage these interactions. Also, it's important to note that it's always good practice to mix some version of the three primary colors in unequal proportions, in a hierarchy, so to speak, in order to obtain harmony among hues. It's a good idea to leave a trace around the mixture of colors that you use so you don't lose track of what you're doing and to keep control of the mixture. An easier way of lowering a mixture's intensity without affecting its tone is by separately mixing black and white, making a gray color the same tone as the mixture. When you mix black and white, try to match the resulting tone to the tone of the mixture whose intensity you want to lower. In order to compare tones, every time you lighten or darken the gray tone, pick some of it up with your brush or knife, and without touching the mixture on your palette, place your brush or knife over it. Squint your eyes and visualize the point at which the two tones seem to visually blend or fuse together. Before mixing gray with the other mixture, make sure both mixtures have a similar tone. Notice that the resulting black and white mixture is a cool gray that belongs to the blue color family. If you want to mix a warm gray, you can add a little warm hue that belongs to the red, orange, or yellow families. If you want a neutral gray, just mix a cool gray and a warm gray. Very shortly, you should be able to distinguish color temperatures. Even though this method of adjusting color intensity doesn't produce colors as chromatic as the ones made with complements. It's a good alternative. You might like it.